Good morning, class 9. Today we are going to start the first chapter in history, the French Revolution. On the morning of 14 July 1789, the city of Paris was in a state of alarm. The king had commanded troops to move into the city. Rumors spread that he would soon order the army to open fire upon the citizens. Some 7,000 men and women gathered in front of the town hall and decided to form a people's militia. Militia means people's force, military force who could fight for the people. They broke into a number of government buildings in search of arms. Finally, a group of several hundred people marched towards the eastern part of the city and stormed the fortress prison of Bastille, where they hoped to find hoarded ammunition. In the armed fight that followed, the commander of the Bastille was killed and prisoners released, though there were only 7 of them. Yet the Bastille was hated by all because it stood for the despotic power of the king. The fortress was demolished and its stone fragments were sold in the markets to all those who wished to keep a souvenir of its destruction. The days that followed saw more rioting both in Paris and the countryside. Most people were protesting against the high price of bread. Much later, when historians looked back upon this time, they saw it as the beginning of the chain of events that ultimately led to the execution of the king in France, though most people at the time did not anticipate this outcome. How and why did this happen? French society and during the late 18th century. Pay attention, now your main chapter begins. In 1774, Louis XVI of the Bourbon family of kings ascended the throne of France. So, the first important thing that you have to remember in this starting of the chapter is that during the time of French Revolution, the king of France was Louis XVI. Underline this name and learn it. He was 20 years old and married to the Austrian princess Marie Antoinette. Upon his accession, the new king found an empty treasury. Long years of war had drained the financial resources of France. Added to this was the cost of maintaining an extravagant court at the immense palace of Versailles. Under Louis XVI, France helped the 13 American colonies to gain their independence from the common enemy, Britain. The war added more than $1 billion to a debt that had already risen to more than 2 billion livres. You can see the meaning of livres is given, unit of currency in France. Lenders who gave the state credit now began to charge 10% interest on loans. So the French government was obliged to spend an increasing percentage of its budget on interest payments alone. To meet its regular expenses, such as the cost of maintaining the army, the court, running government offices or universities, the state was forced to increase taxes. Yet, even this measure would not have sufficed. French society in the 18th century was divided into 3 estates, and only members of the third estate paid taxes. Now, before I proceed, let me tell you what all things you have to learn and remember in this paragraph. The first thing is you have to remember that during the time of the French Revolution, Louis XVI was the king of France. Secondly, you have to remember that the French society was divided into 3 estates. Remember, not states, estate, E-S-T-A-T-E. As you can see, The figure is made in your book showing the three estates. The first estate consisted of the clergy, the second estate consisted of the nobility, and the third estate consisted of the common people. The common people comprised of big businessmen, merchants, court officials, lawyers, peasants and artisans, small peasants, landless labor, and servants. And the worst thing was that the taxes which were levied by Louis XVI, the taxes had to be paid only by the people belonging to the third estate. The people of the first estate and the second estate, that is the clergy and the nobility, did not have to pay any taxes. The common people, that is the third estate, was burdened with the payment of all the taxes. Now, why were these new taxes imposed? This also you must know. The lines are given here: to meet its regular expenses, such as cost of maintaining the army, the court, running government offices or universities, the state was forced to increase taxes. So, these increased taxes were to be paid or had to be paid by the third estate only. The Society of Estates was part of the feudal system that dated back to the Middle Ages. The term old regime is usually used to describe the society and institutions of France before 1789. Figure 2 shows how the system of estates in French society was organized. Peasants made up of about 90% of the population. However, only a small number of them owned the land they cultivated. About 60% of the land was owned by nobles, the church, and other richer members of the third estate. The members of the first two estates, that is the clergy and the nobility, enjoyed certain privileges by birth. The most important of these was exemption from paying taxes to the state. As I just told you that the clergy and the nobility did not have to pay any taxes. The taxes had to be paid only by the third estate. Peasants were obliged to render services to the Lord, to work in his house and fields, to serve in the army, or to participate in building roads. The church too extracted its share of taxes called tithes from the peasants. Now here children, you have to learn two taxes. It's a very important 1 mark question. The two taxes levied on the third estate were tithe and tail. The meanings are given here also in the chapter. What was tithe and what was tail? See, tithe, a tax levied by the church comprising 1/10 of the agricultural produce, and tail, tax to be paid directly to the state. The church too extracted its share of taxes called tithes from the peasants, and finally all members of the third estate had to pay taxes to the state. These included a direct tax called tail and a number of indirect taxes which were levied on articles of everyday consumption like salt or tobacco. So in all, 3 major taxes had to be paid by the third estate: the tithe, the tail, and indirect taxes which were levied on articles of day-to-day consumption like salt or tobacco. The burden of financing activities of the state through taxes was borne by the third estate alone. The struggle to survive. The population of France rose from about 23 million in 1715 to 28 million in 1789. This led to a rapid increase in the demand for food grains. Pay attention. This paragraph is also very important. I am reading once more. The population of France rose from about 23 million in 1715 to 28 million in 1789. This led to a rapid increase in the demand for food grains. Obviously, when the population was rising, the demand for food grains was also increasing. Production of grains could not keep pace with the demand, but the problem was that the demand and the supply could not meet each other. The demand was more, but the production of food grains was less. So the price of bread, which was the staple diet of the majority, rose rapidly. Now, in order to meet the demand for food grains, the price of bread kept on increasing. Most workers were employed as laborers in workshops whose owner fixed their wages. But wages did not keep pace with the rise in prices. The wages were less and the prices of bread were more. So the gap between the poor and the rich widened. Things became worse whenever drought or hail reduced the crop. This led to a subsistence crisis, something that occurred frequently in France during the old regime. You can be asked in the exam, what do you mean by subsistence crisis? So you will write this whole paragraph. Subsistence crisis means that situation when the basic means of livelihood are not provided to the people. It can be due to rise in prices, it can be due to natural calamities like drought or hail. Subsistence crisis is that problem, is that extreme situation where the basic means of livelihood are not provided to the people. The reasons can be due to natural calamities, due to excessive rise in prices, due to shortage of food grains, etc. So this subsistence crisis is a very important part of this chapter. A growing middle class envisages an end to privileges. In the past, peasants and workers had participated in revolts against increasing taxes and food scarcity. But they lacked the means and programs to carry out full-scale measures that would bring about a change in the social and economic order. This was left to those groups within the third estate who had become prosperous and had access to education and new ideas. The 18th century witnessed the emergence of social groups termed the middle class. Pay attention, this paragraph is important. The 18th century witnessed the emergence of social groups which was called as the middle class, who earned their wealth through an expanding overseas trade and from the manufacture of goods such as woolen and silk textiles that were either exported or bought by the richer members of society. In addition to merchants and manufacturers, the third estate included professionals such as lawyers or administrative officials. All of these were educated and believed that no group in society should be privileged by birth. This line is very important. The new educated middle class believed that there should be no group in the society that should be privileged by birth. These ideas, envisaging a society based on freedom and equal laws and opportunities for all, were put forward by philosophers such as John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, if you write only Locke and only Rousseau, then also there is no problem. So, it's better you write only Locke and only Rousseau with correct spellings. So what did we read here? That the educated middle class was of the opinion that there should be no person in the society who should get privileges by birth. Everybody should get freedom, everybody should be considered equal before the law, and everybody should get equal opportunities. This idea was made popular among the people by John Locke and Rousseau. In his two treatises of government, this was a book written by John Locke. Locke sought to refute the doctrine of the divine and absolute right of the monarch. Rousseau carried the idea forward, proposing a form of government based on social contract between people and their representatives. In the spirit of the laws, Montesquieu, he was the third very famous philosopher during the French Revolution. The Spirit of the Laws was the book written by Montesquieu. Montesquieu proposed a division of power within the government between the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. This model of government was put into force in the USA after the 13 colonies declared their independence from Britain. The American Constitution and its guarantee of individual rights was an important example for political thinkers in France. So here in these two paragraphs, you must remember the books written by John Locke, Montesquieu and Rousseau. Then you must remember that during the French Revolution, the three famous French philosophers were Rousseau, Locke and Montesquieu. It is often asked in the exams also. The ideas of these philosophers were discussed intensively in salons and coffee houses and spread among the people through books and newspapers. These were frequently read aloud in groups for the benefit of those who could not read and write. The news that Louis XVI planned to impose further taxes to be able to meet the expenses of the state generated anger and protest against the system of privileges. So till now, the taxes which were levied by Louis XVI were not enough. He was planning to impose more taxes upon the third estate, and this aroused anger among the people. The outbreak of the revolution. So what was the major reason for the outbreak of the revolution? The news that Louis XVI was planning to impose more taxes on the common people. Louis XVI had to increase taxes for reasons you have learnt in the previous section. How do you think he could have gone about doing this? In France, the old regime, the monarch did not have the power to impose taxes according to his will alone. He could not decide and impose taxes if he wanted. Rather, he had to call a meeting of the Estates General. Like we have Parliament here, similarly it was the Estates General there, which could then pass his proposals for new taxes. The Estates General was a political body to which the three estates sent their representatives. However, the monarch alone could decide when to call a meeting of this body. The last time it was done in 1614. On May 5, 1789, Louis XVI called together an assembly of the Estates General to pass proposals for new taxes. A resplendent hall in Versailles was prepared to host the delegates. The first and the second estates sent 300 representatives each, who were seated in rows facing each other on two sides, while the 600 members of the third estate had to stand at the back. The reason was simple, because the third estate comprised of the common people and they were not given any importance in the Estates General. Peasants, artisans and women were denied entry to the assembly. However, their grievances and demands were listed in some 40,000 letters which the representatives had brought with them. Voting in the Estates General in the past had been conducted according to the principle that each estate had one vote. This time too, Louis XVI was determined to continue the same practice. But members of the third estate demanded that voting now be conducted by the assembly as a whole. where each member would have one vote. Earlier, what was the procedure? Every estate had one vote. Out of the first estate, one vote. Out of the second estate, one vote. And out of the third estate, one vote. But now the members of the third estate demanded that each member should be allowed to give his vote. This was one of the democratic principles put forward by the philosophers like Rousseau in his book The Social Contract. When the king rejected this proposal, members of the third estate walked out of the assembly in protest. The representatives of the third estate viewed themselves as spokesmen for the whole French nation. They believed that the third estate, since it comprised of the common people, so they believed that they are representing the whole of France. On 20th June, they assembled in the hall of an indoor tennis court in the grounds of Versailles. They declared themselves a national assembly and swore not to disperse till they had drafted a constitution for France that would limit the powers of the monarch. They were led by Mirabeau and Abbassez. Mirabeau was born in a noble family but was convinced of the need to do away with a society of feudal privilege. He brought out a journal and delivered powerful speeches to the crowd assembled at Versailles. Now I am stopping here for today. Next time we will start from page number 9. Whatever I have read today, please read once more, and then if you have any difficulty, you can ask me in the next class. Thank you, children.